I was at a wedding last night, and my heart is all gushy and squishy, and it was so beautiful to see this young couple look into each other's eyes. And even though they'd been together about 8 years, they said, this is the anniversary of our 8th year, and like it was old hat. It was brand new, and it was just such a beautiful thing. And what was really sweet is that the people that were surrounding them loved them so much. And it was interesting when I got to walk around and talk with people, there was one person who says, I really like positive living. I really like it. Where are you from? I really like to be upbeat. And there's so many stuff that can, so much stuff that can drag us down or we can drag around. And he says, wow, I really like what you're up to, and I'm really inspired by this. And then I introduced myself to someone else, and they were saying, they were reciting the news and all the things that were bad and wrong and things that they were worried about or fearful about. And it was so interesting. We were all at the same place, right? And some of us were dancing and having a good time and celebrating and being in the flow. And then some of the other folks were just not having such a good time, even though we were all there to celebrate their love. But it's interesting what we bring with us to the party, right? It's really interesting how we are. And so today we have an opportunity to have a reset. And what's interesting is I was traveling here it was a couple weeks ago, and I needed to send an email. It was on a Monday when Kathy Azar is here, and she's our bookkeeper. And I needed to send a thing because Chinook School was getting a brand new, beautiful storage shed out the back so they can have their curriculum and the kids can run around and learn about spiritual living and all kinds of good stuff and even more love. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to drive across. I was across town. I wasn't going to drive across town because it would be 20 minutes from there and then 20 minutes back. And I thought, I'm just going to stop at a restaurant and I'm going to use their wireless. And I had a choice. Like in my mind, I had a choice of maybe there was this restaurant, or this restaurant. And I pulled over to the one I hadn't expected to go to. It was kind of off the route, but it saved me from coming back here. So I pull in and I launch my computer, and this gentleman sitting next to me says, "You want a piece of pizza?" And I sure, I love pizza. It has all the food groups, you bet. Yeah. And so he just slices me up a piece of pizza and he says, "Do you know how to change a PDF file into a Word file, something that's editable?" And he says, "Here, I'll email it to you from my phone." So I've got my little laptop, and he's emailing from his phone. And I said, "Yeah, not a problem. I'll take it into Acrobat, and we'll see if we can do it." And it depends on the quality of the file, sort of like it depends on the quality of our life. We might be at a wedding talking about something that's awesome or not so awesome. So the quality of our life. So it depends on the quality of the file. And so I was able to, about 3 different tries, get it back to him. And it meant a lot to him because it was a request for a proposal, which meant a lot of business for him. And what's really sweet is for dessert, you know what I got? Chocolate. Almost, it's as good as chocolate. It is. Yeah. So he takes out his wallet and he hands me a $100 bill. Can you believe that? The universe is always supplying us with amazing things. When I woke up that morning, I had no idea I'd be meeting a man sharing a pizza. And that he would say, I value what you just did, and it's going to make a difference for a lot of folk. So it's pretty incredible. So I want us to be open to the possibility, to be open to that power of possibility. And we all have skills and talents and abilities that we can use, whether we know about PDF files or could care less. We know about something else, and we can put those talents to use. And so rather than using our time or energy to worry about stuff, because I could have gone to a different restaurant. I could have worried, well, maybe this isn't the route, but I was feeling pulled that this was where I needed to be. And so to trust and know that we're creative, that we have resources, that we're resourceful, that we come with a sense of wellness, and we come well and capable with things that we want to do. And Dr. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of the Science of Mind, which is a guide for spiritual living, the Science of Mind and Spirit, he talks about we're all thinking, willing, knowing, conscious centers of life. We are surrounded by, immersed in, and there is a flowing through us as a creative something. Call it what you will. We're flowing, right? There's the synchronicity and the synergy that's flowing in our lives. And I remember when I used to travel to Charlottesville, Virginia for business from Los Angeles, and I helped out with this nonprofit group, and their headquarters was there, and it was the first time I experienced a balloon ride. And it was I was thinking as I hopped into the basket, there's all these ropes, and then there's all these sandbags that are in the middle to keep it down, and there's some wind that's going this way and some wind that's going this way. And the basket was like bouncing up and down as we were getting settled and people were loading, and I was holding on. And when we were ready to go, the pilot, he started to throw out the sandbags. I'm thinking, well, what century are we in? He started to throw out those sandbags. And so he threw one out, and it lifted a little bit, and it bounced. And he threw out another one, and it bounced a little bit, and then he kept throwing out these sandbags that were holding us down. And I kind of thought that, I've got a list like that I could just throw out, and I'd be a lot lighter, that I could be lifted up, and I could travel a lot lighter and not be held down by ropes or by sandbags. And what's really great is I received this week a list of 10 ways where we may be making our life harder or heavier. 10 ways. So that as we begin to lift off and to pick up those sandbags and throw them out, or at least take a look at them, and when we're ready to throw them out, we can. We might want to hold on to some of them, right? Or we might want to throw them out. We can look at 10 ways as we can pick them up and throw them out, and so we can fly. So many of us, we spend time perhaps wanting a relationship with Spirit, the thing itself. Call it what you will, is what Dr. Ernest Holmes says. Whatever you call it, the connection. But it could be difficult to have this relationship if we've got a lot of those bags in the way, if we've got a lot of the sandbags. And if we're in such a worry or such a hurry, then we don't know what's available, or we haven't discovered that we're already in the presence of the presence, that we already are capable to fly. So when we handle our earth-based needs, sometimes we have earth-based needs. Our minds are a bit more open when we're all taken care of at whatever that Maslow, that hierarchy of our, making sure that we have those needs met, of our physical bodies, of our finances, of our health, of knowing that we're supported. When our soul and our heart and our soul are more open to realize that we are not just making things happen, or that we are realizing that we can attune and align ourselves to the universal principles, and we can use those spiritual practices that we already know. We already have that information right here, that we can move as a peaceful presence. We can be healthy, we can be balanced, we can be high functioning, we can be purposeful, we can have a vision, we can be peaceful in the presence of Spirit. We can be present in this presence of Spirit because I'm not worried. I'm not worried about the sandbags that might be dragging me down or the ropes that might be tying me. And so there's 10 ways that may be making our lives harder than it needs to be. And Tim Hook, he talks, I just call them sandbags, but he talks about these 10 things. He says, number 1, we might ascribe intent. Anyone ever ascribed intent? Someone doesn't text you back, or someone doesn't call you back, or there's another driver who cut us off on the freeway, or someone you care about said something and then we ruminate about what that is, or we took whatever it is as a personal affront, right? So everyone can find a reason to be offended by something, probably on a daily basis, right? On a hopefully not steady and constant basis, but we begin to be even more aware and notice it. So that we take some things personal. And happy people do not ascribe intent. what happy people do is they don't take things personally. And so if we look back at the 4 agreements about not taking things personally, the 4 agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, who is a New York Times bestseller, we can revisit that, and it's nice to revisit. So we don't inscribe a tent. So we don't ascribe a tent to the actions of others. Number 2, we could think that like it's only about like we're the center of the universe. Remember how we used to think the world was flat? Now the world is round. And so we could think that we're the star of our own movie, like it's all, we're the protagonist, maybe not all the time. And so it's little wonder that we believe that, when we believe this, that there's a world that revolves around us. And we know that there's a bigger universe, perhaps, than just our world, that there's more of a 360 as we enlarge this ever-expanding view. So, yeah, we are the star of our movie. We write our own script, yes. And we know how we want it to unfold. And then sometimes there's people in our life where we may not have shared the script with. We may not have shared that this is my intent, or we have certain ways that we desire things to end, like you go to a movie or you go to a play. We have some wonderful small theaters in Albuquerque here. We have a perspective. So, unfortunately, sometimes we forget to share our script with anyone else, right? Our kids, our grandkids, our neighbors. So, and as a result, people may be unaware of the role that we think that they're supposed to play. And so when they mess up their lines, right, we may think that they fail. We lose that support. We want to be able to welcome new characters. We want to be able to have an element of surprise and to welcome and be open and not so fixed. We want to be flexible. We want to embrace whatever those plot changes might be, to embrace that change. So in relationships, we might look at this and we might fast forward. I'm having a little bit of hotness with the sound here, I apologize. So we may fast forward and we may escalate things. So number 3, that makes our life harder, is we may escalate things. We may say, whoo, I have a bad habit of fast forwarding everything, and it's like the worst possible outcome. It's like the one person who I met at the wedding last night. Oh, it was the worst possible thing. And that sometimes that's how people may introduce themselves. That's what this gentleman did last night. Here, I'm introducing myself as the worst possible thing. Can you imagine walking around like having a Post-it on your forehead? And it's unnecessary. Sometimes we do this for ourselves. We have some sort of a tickle in our throat, and we think, oh, it's some deathly illness, and we may escalate something like that. I may have lost my driver's license, and I think, oh, the secret operative is going to get it, and instead of just going back to the restaurant at Mimi's where I left my wallet, just calmly go back. Oh yeah, of course they had it. The waitress had it, or the credit card. They could have a lot more fun than I have sometimes. Who knows? Well, and what I know is that I used to body surf, and that when I was body surfing, I would need to go, instead of being in an undertow of whatever this collective consciousness is, of people introducing ourselves as the worst thing, that I would need to swim a little bit across current so that I could then create my own current and then go with the wave, so that I would be guided in that direction of the wave, or I may want to swim in another direction and not be pulled by something else that's pulling me. And in spiritual living, in our teaching, that's called race consciousness. And so we may want to look at how our individual consciousness can contribute to that collective consciousness. And that's a lot about what our sacred covenant is about, because we're inviting us to experience that intent and to see how that shows up, to begin to notice results, how that shows up. So rather than being in a direction that pulls us under, like the gentleman who introduced himself, we can be pulled by the other person who says, yes, I'm enjoying my life, and I want to be around people who are doing that. There's a 4th thing that may make our life harder. There may be more than 10, right? These are just the greatest hits. The fourth one is we may have unrealistic expectations. Not anyone in this room has ever had any unrealistic expectations or not communicated. And sometimes we don't communicate like that script that we've had, we have the script all laid out. And then, of course, we have a cast of characters. And so we may have uncommunicated expectations. And so my family and friends maybe necessarily can't read my mind. And so unless they're clairvoyant like the lottery winners, and if they are, ask them for the numbers, would you? Ask them for numbers. It could be that our family and friends may or may not be clairvoyant. But if they are, do ask them. So if we have unrealistic or uncommunicated, you'll remember that, right? Yeah, communicate, right? So if we have uncommunicated, sometimes we're silent, and we think, we think this internally, this or that. We think about those things, but we don't communicate what we really desire or what our current needs are, or how we can be giving in whatever that relationship is. It could be that our boyfriend of 6.5 years forgot to celebrate that anniversary of that 6.5 years of our first movie date, something that could be real important to us as ladies. Or the girlfriend refuses to call at an appointed hour. Maybe we'd set up something and there's a no-show, whatever that is. Or maybe our kids or coworkers failed to succeed from whatever perspective. Maybe we're sensing that because we had expectations or we had something that we didn't communicate. And so we know we all look through our own lens. Oh, are we ascribing intent? Are we? Yeah, are we no one in this room would be doing that. But we may have unmet expectations which are at the root of any unhappiness. So if we look at our life in terms of, it's like Science of Mind and Spirit 101, the 4 agreements. If we look at that again, and it's beautiful to revisit just those 4 ideas of be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. And always do your best. We have our own intent and we don't need to ascribe it to others. We can stay on our course and look to the direction of our life, and then we also have the influence around others. What's really beautiful is that people call me when they're on Route 66, and I got a call yesterday from my friend Mel, who's a practitioner emeritus at a center in Arizona. And he says, do you have a recommendation for a restaurant? I'm right in your backyard. And I said, let me know in advance next time and I can join you. We're just breezing through. And he's such like this teddy bear. And so Mel, the teddy bear, calls. And I said, well, how are you? And don't you love it? We're on Route 66 and we have people coming, we're going east, they're coming west. And they're calling and saying, do you have some time to just laugh and have some fun while we're driving and looking for a restaurant? And I said, yeah, just turn off here and go there and put it in your GPS, you'll be fine. And by the way, it's still delicious and wonderful. And so Mel said, my wife and I are still having the same argument. After 40 years, we're still having the same argument. We say that the other one got the better deal. Right? He's complimenting his wife, that she's the best ever wife. And she's complimenting him that he's the best ever husband for 40 years. And when they minimize their anticipations or expectations, they maximize their joy. And they communicate that. We all can minimize our expectations or anticipations and maximize our joy. And it could be that number 5 that makes our life heavy, rather than breezing through, hey, you got a restaurant recommendation. We can say that maybe some of us are just waiting for a sign. Remember the redneck comedians that said, here's your sign. We might just be waiting and like in this holding pattern and waiting. And I have a friend who would not make a decision without a sign. And I suppose that she was waiting for some trumpeted announcement, and she was constantly paralyzed. She was like stuck. And what she did was she decided that she would then begin to help shape her life, not by situations, but she began to shape her life through her intentions. And so there's 10 ways that we can make our lives easier. Now, number 6, we're still hanging out in what's maybe still difficult, right? We don't take risks. And so to make our life easier, I would recommend that we live boldly, that we live in a robust way, that we live boldly, just those 2 words. So every single time that we make a choice that involves a little bit of a greater risk, we'll be glad we did. Number 7 is we compare our lives to others. Do we do this? Those people, I know I was in a waiting room the other day and they had the People magazine, and do you compare your hairstyle? A friend of mine was looking for a new hairstyle like Meg Ryan. And so she needed the People magazine to say, here's what I want to look like as Meg Ryan. And it's so easy to pull things up on the cell phone now too. We can compare ourselves to others. We can say, well, Kurt gets all the best breaks, or Fred has more money, or Mel and Penny have more fun because that's just who they are, or Mary has a bigger home, or John is better looking. Maybe he looks like George Clooney. I don't know. So maybe Meg Ryan and George Clooney got together. But we can stop. We can stop comparing ourselves. And it was Teddy Roosevelt who said, comparison is the thief of joy. So let's take our joy back. Let's take it back. We have our own integrity. And we don't need to do like the heavy thing or make life harder than it is. Like number 8, it says, we let other people take from us. We have our own integrity. And so what if we had $1 gazillion underneath our mattress? Remember those stories is we'd have it under the mattress. Wouldn't we check it regularly? And we, just to ensure, gazillion dollars, whatever that value is that's in our life. And what's one thing in our life that's valuable? It's our time. So one of our valuable resources is time. And sometimes we willingly give away our time. Well, maybe it's time for us to value our time, and we may not be spending so much time at the wedding with the person who said, oh, it's all cynical, or whatever that is. We may say, oh, my time, I'm just going to, thank you very much, thank you, and I'm going to go be with this other person and take back the joy. Even, it doesn't mean I don't have compassion, but I can take back that joy. And so it could be that we begin to treat our time and our energy more like Fort Knox, because it is worth like $1 gazillion. It's right there, and we may want to know that we deserve it, and that we accept it, and that we respect it, because we do. We deserve it, we accept it, and we expect it. And last week we had an inspirational message that says that we can choose. We can choose what to focus on, we can choose what to give meaning to, and we can choose what to do. And I know we all did our homework, right? And number 9, we can't sometimes, or we won't. Might be can't, might be won't. We won't let go. And sometimes we get to realize that we can up-level our sense of happiness. There may be some hurdles that we have, some difficulties that we may want to clear. We may want to be more clear about those hurdles. Do we need to forgive someone? Do we need to have a breakthrough in a relationship? Do we need to come to terms with a loss, whether it's a loss of a loved one or some sense of loss with our health or peace of mind or relationships? In this life, we do experience loss. And in a sense, real happiness may not be possible without it. We can savor those experiences and know that we're strengthened by that. And we may never have completion and closure in some areas, but we know that we're moving as that toward that in those breakthroughs, whatever those losses are. And it helps us grow, and we have a new sense of appreciation. We remember what really matters through those losses as we grow through loss. And it really puts loss in perspective. We may have regret. We may have doubt. We may second guess ourselves. Not even ascribing intent, but we may second guess. If we'd only said this, or if we'd only tried that. And a friend of mine, we have this girl group that meets on occasion, and she'd been sitting with her husband and back and forth between the hospital and the rehab and all these complications, and she was having to navigate through that. And she has such a sense of humor. What we ended up is this gaggle of geese in this room. And levity was so good. Much like Mel was saying that they're still having the same argument, that she's the best or he's the best, that they're both the best. They're still having that argument. But my friend was saying, she was just so bringing levity to her situation because it was hard. It was heavy, and she had to deal with a lot of details. And what she got to do is to live and to love and to laugh through it. And what she brought was like this healing laughter with her at this girl group, and we got to just love on her. And we were talking about, so I live in Corrales, and we were talking about, she has such a sense of humor. She says, the bugs in Corrales, you can hear them walk. And I can just imagine her when she was sitting with all the people who were helping her husband. She's just cracking jokes to keep her level up, to keep her energy up, and to remember what really mattered most was that she had her own energy that she could care for her husband. And so we had a series of all these other insect jokes, because that's what you do in Corrales. And there were some frog jokes. There was my dog, not my dog had fleas, but my dog had a cicada, and it was the best squeak toy ever. And just all these things that maybe you had to be there, but it's made you laugh. Good, made you laugh. All right. So her husband had been in and out of all these situations, but yes, she could up-level her experience of that. And so what we get to know is that we're not alone, and she found herself supported, that she could really look at the sandbags and to begin to throw them overboard so that then she could fly. And she could also provide that energy, that positive energy, and immerse herself in what she was doing and what she was being, in the way of the world she was being. And she got involved. She got involved in her life. She got involved with those other people and made a difference and had to connect all those dots. Anyone ever had to connect a lot of dots and see that those connections were happening? So she began to throw those sandbags over and fly. So there's 10 ways of making our lives a little bit easier. You ready for that? A little bit easier. Is to number one, it's the opposite of the number one of the harder. So we're going to go from harder to easier, from heavier to lighter. You ready for that? A little bit of heaviness to lightness. Number one was we can be clear. We can be impeccable with our word. We can be pristine and clean with our word and clear. Number two, we can be inclusive. Number three is we can have it be natural. Be more natural. Instead of having to make things happen, to be more in the flow and allowing that flow to be more free. We can also have realistic anticipations and communicate. And we don't make assumptions. And we can move forward and not take anything personally. Move forward. Don't let whatever... Terry Cole Whitaker wrote that book years ago, is what you think of me is none of my business. And if we looked at the world and we have our own intent, we're not ascribing intent to other folk, but we're having our own intent. And then we can be bold. Sometimes, it takes time to be bold. It takes energy. So we're having some of our time back. We're having some of our energy back. We know we're resourceful. We know there's creativity. We have integrity, number 8. Oh, number 7, don't compare. And 9, we can let be and set free. And then number 10, this is the kicker, is that we can give. Always do your best. And we can say a kind word. We can do our best. We can look and consider what we're thinking. We can think. And we can actively be involved in life. We can think. And before we speak, we can think, is it true? Is it helpful? We can encourage someone. We can pay a visit to someone who might be alone a lot of the time. We can get away from whatever self-absorption and give of that divine nature and give of ourselves. We can be helpful. Is it inspiring? So we can think before we speak. Is it inspiring? And is it necessary? And is it kind? And there was a story in the news this week, and I buy fresh eggs from a couple blocks up, and I buy them from the chickens. They're brown, they're fresh, they're free-range, cage-free, and bird-friendly, and funded with microloans, and organic, and anyways, they're from the chicken. They're about $3. I get them from the chickens. They're next to the goats. And the llamas and the donkeys and the burros. So there was a story in the news, and there was allegations that this grandmother at Dollar General had stolen a dozen eggs. And in the car, she had her 2 daughters and her grandkids. And this is in Alabama, and she could have gone to jail. Instead, there was an act of compassion. This officer got to think, is it kind? Can I make someone's life easier rather than harder? Because she was having a difficult time. And this act was caught on camera. Officer William Stacy reported to the Dollar General employees that had allegedly caught this woman stealing a dozen eggs. The 47-year-old grandmother, Helen Johnson, told the store management and the officer that she stole the eggs to feed her grandchildren who were waiting in the car. Johnson told the local media and her family, including that her 2 daughters and the 2 grandchildren, whose ages were 1 and 3, that they had not eaten in 2 days when she attempted to steal the eggs. And the family's welfare check was lost in the mail, and that her disability check had not arrived yet, but it was due to arrive. And the Dollar General management declined to press charges. And Officer Stacy made this grandmother, Helen Johnson, an offer. He said, I'll buy your eggs for you if you promise not to do anything like this again. And after receiving the eggs, the officer and the grandmother hugged. And so what he did was kind and inspiring. And he made life a little bit easier for himself and for her. She accepted his offer. She accepted the eggs. And her family got to be a little bit more buoyant. And I know that each and every one of us have a place where we can be a little bit more buoyant and uplifting in our life, that we can think. And when it comes down to it, there's 2 people in the world, two types, not just 2 people, 2 types of people. There's givers and there's takers. And which one are we? Let's throw those sandbags over and fly. So I invite you to join within and turn within in this moment of inner celebration, and just knowing that there is that which is the freedom, the cornerstone of freedom that is in our lives, that there is that which is free and a little bit easier. There is that which is a bit breezier, and that there is this energy, this divine energy, which is ever expanding in a harmonizing way. There is the infinite presence, and being present with this presence, I know that I'm connected, and that there is the greater good, which is unfolding right here and now in grace and ease and kindness and in total love. There is supreme love right here and right now, and it is that which is the giving nature, and it is given in this place of wellness and well-being, of harmony, of divine life. And it is in this divine life that there is the abundant flow. It is the free-flowing good. In the fullness and the acceptance of that, and knowing that there is the openness and receptivity, that as there is this taking flight in the beautiful thing called life, it is that which is the energy which is setting us free, that which is the divine within. And knowing that being surrounded and immersed in it, that it is everywhere present, it is that which is this thing called life. And so I'm grateful for this appreciation, for this knowing, for this livingness, for this beauty which is sharing and shining itself as this amazing life. And I release this word, knowing that as we let be and set free this fullness of intent, that these beautiful seeds of freedom are planted and grow so beautifully and successfully. And so be it, and so it is.